Effective management of any business requires close monitoring of your accounts receivable position as you walk that delicate tightrope of extending credit to customers to facilitate sales, whilst at the same time minimising your potential exposure to bad debts and losses to the business. In the Visage R5 system, this would be managed on a daily basis through the Accounts Receivable Enquiries menu. And in particular, we're going to look at these first four items: the 360-degree view, a multi-customer inquiry, a debtors inquiry, and also a posted documents inquiry. But as you'll see, the reach of these inquiries spreads out into other systems as well. Let's start off by having a look at the 360-degree view. Some companies, or some people within companies, may spend the majority of their time in this screen on a daily basis, simply because it provides an effective switchboard to other areas of the system. When we first come in, you'll notice that we have a number of tables here. The first table shows us all invoices that have currently been entered on the system, and here I'm talking about invoices from the order entry system. The second table shows us all orders, once more from the order entry system, that are currently outstanding. The third table shows us all jobs that have currently been created and are flagged as active within the system. The bottom table here in the left-hand corner shows us any credits that have been entered and are as yet unposted through the order entry system. The next table shows us any quotes that are outstanding from the order entry system as well. The table directly under the job table shows us any outstanding job costing quotes that we may have. And finally, the last table tucked away on the bottom right here is a table of documents that have been entered up in the accounts receivable system. You'll also notice we have two graphs, one that is a sales graph and the other that gives us an aged analysis of your debtors. Please disregard the actual numbers in this case because we're looking at our test data. You also have a radio button here. At the moment, the sales graph is displaying our actual movement on a month-by-month or period-by-period basis. The other way of looking at our sales information would be to look at this as a cumulative total. At the moment, you may not necessarily be able to tell, for example, if our current 12-month period is performing better than the previous 24 months. If we show the accumulated totals, though, it's obvious that we're doing much better this year than we were last year. You'll also notice at the bottom of each of these tables there is a button labelled New. Not surprisingly, hitting this button allows us to go and do or enter a new invoice or credit, quote, order, create a new job, create a new quote, or create a new document. So for example, if the phone rings and I needed to now go and create a new invoice for a customer, I could simply, an order entry invoice, I could simply hit the New button and the system will take me directly to the invoice entry screen. Alternatively, if I needed to enter up a new quote from the job costing system, I could hit the New button in the job costing quote table and it would take me to the quote entry screen. So as I said, the 360-degree view gives you a very effective snapshot of every aspect in the business and what is currently outstanding or currently active for your individual customers. It could also be that a customer rings up, you answer the phone, and they have a particular query about their order 1234. At this stage, we don't necessarily know who the customer is, or you probably can pick their voice, but let's say the only information they give us is, I'd like to know the status of my order 1234. In the customer's order field, which is actually referring to the customer's order number, and here the assumption is, and the hope and the desire is, that you would be entering the customer's order number against any and all transactions in the system. If we just enter 1234, the system will go and find us any references in the system that have a customer order number 1234. Now, I can now tell two things. I can see who the customer is. Actually, I can see more than two things. Who the customer is, the total value of that particular order, and I can also see that it appeared on invoice 16909, which hasn't been posted at this point in time. Now, because this is a red underscored figure, not surprisingly, I can click on the invoice number and I'll be taken directly to that invoice. And I can now see that it's been flagged as an urgent pick, and I can tell the customer that yes, we have your order, we have received it, it's been entered into the system, and it's currently flagged as an urgent pick. Yes, you should be getting that tomorrow. Problem averted. The other variation for this inquiry would be to go and find all transactions for a particular customer. So, for example, if I needed to answer a query for customer RF, who just happens to be me, and I knew my code, I could have used my lookup screens, of course, I can currently see at a glance that I have $130,000 worth of invoices currently unposted for this customer. I have $28,000 worth of orders in hand. I have quotes worth $118 outstanding at the moment. I've got one outstanding job costing quote. We're currently doing 4 jobs for them, and there are a total of 4 invoices currently entered on the system. So this 360-degree view inquiry allows us to look at either all debtors or a single debtor in some detail. I just want to refresh this screen and we'll go and have a look at the information for all customers again. Now obviously this takes a while to go through because, as you can see, it's got to go and have a look at all of our order entry information for invoices, credits, quotes and orders. And I should also point out, it is important that you manage your customer orders as well. And by manage I mean that they should be cleared on a regular basis. A customer order, once it's converted to an invoice, is somewhat useless. And yet I have seen people that have kept historical details of orders for 5, 10, 15, anything up to 20 years. And it's information that no one will look at. And really, because it had no financial impact on the business, the financial impact was actually in the invoice, keeping the orders there is somewhat useless. Anyway, here's a picture of absolutely everything in our business at the moment, and I just want to show you what happens if I hit this transaction details button. Keep your eye over here on the left hand side in the little accordion bang bar type thing. When I hit transaction details, we'll go to the second menu item that we had on our inquiries screen, which was a multi-customer inquiry. And just explaining what's going on here, the transaction buttons relate to the current sales and aged balances information. So when I click transaction details, it's taken me to the multi-customer inquiry screen, and here I get to see how those balances are actually made up. So I get to see details of absolutely every customer, what their aged position is, when the last time they made payments and so forth was. And of course, as each of these individual customers, you'll notice they have a red underscore on them, so it shouldn't come as a great surprise that I can click on any of these and go and get additional detail. You may recall the third item on that debtor inquiry screen was an individual debtor inquiry. So when I click on a debtor code here to see how this $75,000 is made up and why we have $60,000 outstanding for 3 periods, and worse still, why we've got $187,000 outstanding for even more than 3 periods, clicking on the debtor number will take me to an individual debtor inquiry. And here I get to see details of monthly purchases and also monthly payments. The current screen, which I would access by clicking the current button, will show me all of the current transactions for this particular debtor. Now once more, you'll see that each of these individual transaction numbers, which are currently outstanding, has an underscore on it. So if I wanted to get the details of what was actually purchased on, say, invoice 16920, I'll note from the posting source that that is, being an ARD, an accounts receivable document, that this particular transaction type was an I, so it was actually an invoice entered up as a document through the accounts receivable. Now you may recall I said that there were 4 inquiries that we were going to look at on the accounts receivable inquiry menu. The last of those was a document inquiry, and this is it. On this screen I'm calling up details of an actual document that was physically entered up onto the system. And if I needed to get a copy of this, I have a print button that will let me get this copy either to screen, printer, I can email it or fax it. I don't really want a copy because if I was talking to the customer I could answer any queries I had now, unless of course they wanted a copy, in which case I could email it directly to them by simply using the print button. I said also, when we looked at those 4 menu items, that we were likely to go to other places in the system as well. And that's because you'll notice on this line, for example, we have a posting source of OEI, which is an order entry invoice. And don't forget, the mnemonics for this are available for you to look at in the general ledger static details area. So here if I click on invoice 16813, once more, not surprisingly, I'm taken to the inquiry screen, now across in the order entry system, to call up details of that particular invoice, the products that were on that invoice, any special charges, and of course if there were note logs against it, I could access that information as well. And once more, because in the product screen here I can see that an individual serial number was sold, but I can also, of this particular product, but I can also see that by clicking on SF2 as the product code, red underscore means I can click on it, this will actually take me into a product inquiry for that particular product, and once more I can access the transactions and so forth. But we'll cover that in the inventory system specifically. If I just exit back a couple of levels to my main inquiry screen here, you'll also see that we have a go button alongside some of these transactions. Now the go button is under a column that says apps. What we see in the inquiry is basically the date of the transaction, the reference number, the type of transaction, the posting source, the due date for that particular transaction. You'll notice here that's blank. The payment type is, or the transaction type is a P, and a payment obviously doesn't have a due date, so that's why that's the case. And if we wanted to find out, you'll notice that payment was originally for $8,000. There's nothing unapplied at the moment. So if we wanted to know where that $8,000 had been applied, by simply clicking on the Go button under Applications, we'll get to see that that $8,000 was applied to these 7 invoices. And once more, because these in turn, the actual invoice numbers have a underscore associated with them, and they're a red highlight type thing, obviously I can click on any of these and I will actually repeat my application inquiry on those particular invoices or payments or whatever it happens to be that I'm clicking on. So within this transaction inquiry process, clicking on these reference numbers here simply allows us to get a detailed inquiry of the applications associated with those particular transaction numbers. We'll just exit out from this once more. You'll also notice that there is a history screen associated with my debtors. Now, once more, the current screen is only going to show you things that are currently outstanding. And that is currently outstanding at the last period end date. They may have been paid now. But as at the last period end, they were outstanding, so on your next statement run, these transactions are going to apply. There's also a historical transaction area, which will show us transactions which have been fully paid or fully applied over time. And once more, you'll see that all of these transaction numbers have an underscore on them, so if you needed to get details about this particular credit, 1337 for example, just click on it and you'll get the details of the credit up on screen. And in this case we can see that these 4 items involved with this credit all originated from invoice 16307. We could click on that to actually go and see what else was on the invoices and so forth. Looks like it may have been a credit for most of the invoices. This also has 4 lines. So with the inquiries, this ability just to be able to click on a transaction number or click on a posting source. For example, if I click on this posting source here, OEI 179, we'll get to see all of the general ledger entries that were made from that particular posting source. If need be, if we wanted to get a copy of the actual journal, we could go to the journal copy page, click print. We might just send that to the screen as opposed to a physical hard copy printer. We can see at this stage when the journal was actually generated originally, but we'll also see that on the top of the journal itself once it displays on the screen, once the PDF viewer starts. But here we'll see that this particular journal was done on the 21st of January 2013 at 10:46. Oops, we'll just call that back. And of course here's the details of the journal itself in my PDF viewer out to the screen. So all of the information that you hopefully would want to get is directly at your fingertips. And once more, by incorporating details on things like the note logs for your transactions, for the invoices and payments and so forth, you're able to access a multitude of rich information to answer any queries. If I just come back to this multi-debtor inquiry for a moment, you'll also notice there's a checkbox up the top that says only show customers with unapplied credits. Remembering, of course, that it's possible for you to say accept payment from someone without actually knowing which invoices that person is paying. They may not have given us a remittance advice at that stage. It may have just been money that's appeared in our bank statement and we don't have any paperwork from them, or it might have been a cash receipt that was received through point of sale. Or it may have been that a check's arrived in the mail and we just don't know where it was going to be applied. But by simply checking this checkbox, this multi-debtor inquiry will now adjust and will only show us people that have got credits on their account that haven't been applied. Now, if we look at the age balance of this first guy, DS, you'll see that he's got a current balance. There are other period balances out there. If I just click on him, I know that this debtor has got credit balances out there. So I'm just going to go into his current area, and what I'm going to do is click on this unapplied amount column. So if I click on here, the system will come and sort my 208 entries. I'll just click on it again to sort it in the other area, and I'll see here that I have 3 credits, 2 payments and an actual credit or a tax adjustment note on his account that haven't been applied anywhere. You'll notice over on the far right here we have an apply button, or an apply column at least. The actual button sometimes is dim, and you'll notice it's dim when there isn't an unapplied balance. But for any transaction, be it an invoice, be it a credit or be it a payment, that actually could potentially be applied, this apply button is active. So I can simply click the apply button from my debtor inquiry. The system will now come and give me a list of all of the invoices that are currently outstanding for this person. It's sorted in date order, so I will get to see the oldest invoices first. And if I wanted to apply my $133 to, say, this oldest invoice first in full, I can simply hit the apply button, and that will apply the full amount and tell me that the new outstanding amount for this that old invoice is going to be $121. Or sorry, will be zero because I'm paying the full $121. I could manually type in amounts to each of these columns if that's what I wanted to do, but generally if whole invoices are being paid, or you would be just clicking the apply button to actually pay them, or to take up credits and so forth as well. And once you hit the save, that will actually do the application for you, and no, it's as simple as that to identify initially through the Accounts Receivable multi-customer inquiry, ticking this box to find people that have got unapplied credits, and then simply zooming into them by clicking on their customer code to then locate what the credits are. Remember to do that. I clicked on the unapplied amounts column, and I had to do that twice. First time, and then the second time we'll get it in the order that I wanted. You'll notice now that I've actually reduced the number of credits because I applied one of them before, so there's only two that are unapplied at this point in time. And I can now go and apply those. That by itself provides a very effective mechanism to be able to ensure, especially as you're getting close to producing your statements, that all of the credits have actually been correctly applied on someone's account. You'll also notice over here on the right hand side that we have a filter box which allows us, for example, to only look at or to filter based on the transaction type. So if I only wanted to look at payments, I could uncheck these three boxes, hit the apply button, and my inquiry screen now will only show me payments that are against this particular debtor. If I wanted to look at payments and credits, I could simply click the credit button as well, click apply, and those filter requirements would actually be there. The buttons down at the bottom of the screen, or the bottom of these transaction types, the plus button will select absolutely everything. The minus button will deselect absolutely everything. And the star button reverses everything. And let me show you what that means. If I have my payment button checked at the moment, if I hit star, the payment button becomes unchecked and everything else becomes checked. So the star is just a nice easy way of reversing everything. So in terms of my selection criteria, if you're interested in just a particular type of transaction, you can enter that in. If you're interested in transactions between a date range or after a date or before a date, or if you know a reference number, a customer order number, or an amount or a due date, any of these criteria can be entered in, apply the filter, and your view will adjust accordingly. If you're actually talking to a customer, making notations and so forth, or if you are talking to the customer, you should, be making notations against their account. There's a notations box on the bottom of the screen. So I can put in here, Ross spoke to Ken on, let's put in today's date, 10th of the 3rd, 14, and he said payment coming soon, or whatever it may be. By clicking the save button, those notations, if I just call up my DS person again, actually get saved out to the files. So just be aware that if you are entering notations in, you have to hit the save button in order for them to stick. Now these notations here visible on the screen are subtly different to the note logs. These notations, if I was no longer interested in that information, about SMS opt-outs and so forth, I can simply go and highlight that text, hit the delete button. I now just have that one set of notations there, hit the save button, and that information that was there has now been lost. Remember always that a note log is a permanent notation. Once you record a note log against an account or an inventory item or an employee or whatever it happens to be, because you'll find these note logs littered liberally throughout the system. Once a note log is made, it can't be unmade. It becomes a very permanent record. And for audit purposes and so forth, that is a great thing, because it means that you're not going to allow people to go and remove audit trails and so forth of, say, debtor follow-up and so forth you've done. Now, it's your choice as to whether, if you are recording notes on someone's account, whether you actually record the notes with a note log as an absolutely permanent record against them, or whether you use this smaller notation screen that you can add and subtract with, or to, as you require. That's really a choice that you get to make as a business as to what really works for you. Now you'll notice, as I did before, obviously when I'm in my individual debtor inquiry, and I might just jump up a couple of levels here, and we might access the individual debtor inquiry just from the menu. Obviously you can put in any debtor. If you don't, whoops, I'll show you what happens if you don't know the debtor number. As everywhere else in the system, you can use your search facilities. You could go and say put in any aspect of the customer in the customer details, every word in the customer's name, their address, their email address, their phone number, their fax number. All of that information is indexed, so by putting any of that information in that you may have, or partial. You might ask someone for the last 3 digits of their mobile phone number, for example. Hit the search button, system will go and perform the search for you, and in this case it's found everyone that has a 2287 in the postcode, so I've got 33 of those. The more information you put in, the more precise the search is going to be, so you'll cut down the list of possibilities that you have presented to you. And as normal with the search screen, simply click the underscored red item and you'll be taken back to the previous screen. Should also have pointed out before, when we're going through these individual screens, the orders screen will show us any orders that are currently outstanding for this particular debtor. I should have not clicked on that. Well, I could have, and I'm taken directly to the order. But if you click on any of these individual lines, and I'm not clicking in this column, because if I click there it will take me out and zoom to the order, but without going to the order I can click somewhere else in this table, and you'll see over here on the right hand side you get a picture of exactly which products and so forth are outstanding on those orders. Now the other thing I want to do just very briefly from this 360-degree view, just to show you the last piece of the puzzle, so to speak, in terms of the debtor inquiry. Once more it's going out and looking up 8 or 9 areas of the system. It's building graphs. We have our information. From here, from the 360-degree view, it's so named because you can look at every aspect that is currently relevant to a debtor at this point in time, or to a customer. If we have a individual customer number entered up on this screen, we'll only get to see information pertaining to that customer, and when we hit the transaction details here, because we have one customer entered up, the transaction details here, rather than taking us to the multi-customer inquiry, will take us to the individual customer inquiry, because, if you will, the system is aware that we're looking at one person only, so the transaction buttons from this 360-degree view in that case will take us into the transaction details. That's it in terms of managing, or at least assisting you to manage, your debtors using the accounts receivable inquiry functions. I'm sure you're going to find them useful, and please catch me on the next video. Bye.